Success. It's the constant drumbeat of modern life, the ultimate aspiration. We chase it, define ourselves by it, and often we sacrifice our deepest selves for it. But what if the very idea of success you're pursuing is a phantom? What if the map you're using to navigate your life was drawn up by a liar, a deceiver masquerading as your deepest truth? That deceiver is your ego. We often think of the ego as a necessary tool, a simple sense of self. But in the pursuit of genuine achievement, the ego becomes a powerful, subtle saboteur. It's a mechanism built on insecurity, desperately trying to construct a version of you that it believes the world will approve of. And to do that, it feeds you lies, deceptive scripts about what is valuable, what is powerful, and what truly constitutes a life well lived. Today, we are stripping away the ego's flimsy mask. We are going beyond the motivational platitudes and the shallow metrics of social approval. To guide us, we'll turn to one of the most fiercely honest minds in history, a philosopher who fundamentally redefined value and strength, Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche understood that true success isn't about accumulating external approval or fitting into pre-existing molds. It's about self-overcoming, the courage to create your own values, and the terrifying freedom of saying yes to life, all of it. When Nietzsche speaks of the will to power, he's not talking about domination over others, but the internal drive to become more, to constantly surmount your former self. In this video, we will dismantle the 5 most poisonous lies your ego tells you about success. Each lie shackles you to mediocrity and external validation. By exposing them through a Nietzschean lens, you will learn to forge a path to value that is authentic, difficult, and profoundly your own. This isn't a path to easy achievement. It's a terrifying and exhilarating journey toward becoming who you truly are. Let's begin the difficult work of setting the inner citadel on fire to see what remains. Lie number 1. Success is measured by the approval of others. The first, and perhaps most insidious, lie your ego whispers to you is this: your value is a reflection of external approval. It tells you that success is a simple equation of metrics: the size of your bank account, the prominence of your job title, the number of followers you have, or the warmth of the applause you receive. This lie turns you into a desperate performer, constantly checking the audience's faces for a sign that you are good enough. Your ego, built on a foundation of social anxiety, needs this constant validation like a life support machine. It transforms genuine drive into a panicked pursuit of appearances. This is the great deception of the modern age, but Nietzsche saw it coming well over a century ago. He understood that when we seek our identity and worth outside of ourselves, we fall prey to the morality of the herd, a value system where the individual is sacrificed for the comfort and consensus of the group. The herd morality, according to Nietzsche, is the glorification of commonness, safety, and mediocrity. It applauds those who blend in, who pose no challenge to the status quo, and who adopt the prepackaged definitions of goodness and success. Your ego uses the herd's standard as a shortcut. It tells you, don't bother with the difficult work of self-discovery. Just copy what everyone else calls successful. It is the impulse behind the constant scrolling and comparing, the desperate need to signal status through possessions or curated online narratives. When your motivation is derived from the desire to impress, you are not living a life of value. You are merely constructing a prison of image management. Every goal you pursue, every sacrifice you make is filtered through the question, what will they think of me? Nietzsche would diagnose this condition as a manifestation of resentment. This French term, which he used heavily, describes a deep-seated hostility and bitterness toward those who are truly strong, creative, and independent. It is a value system born from weakness, where those who cannot create their own values instead condemn the values of the strong. When your ego succumbs to the lie of approval, you are enacting resentment upon yourself. You are allowing the weak generalized consensus of the herd to define your strength. You become resentful of your own power, trading it for the soft, predictable warmth of being accepted, the true, Authentic self, the inner citadel you are trying to cultivate, cannot be measured by a head count or a KPI. It is a force that exists prior to external judgment. Nietzsche's call for the Übermensch, or Overman, is precisely a call to reject this external tyranny. The Übermensch is the individual who creates their own table of values, who looks at the world's metrics and finds them irrelevant. This figure is not antisocial, but is non-reactive. Their energy is spent on becoming, not on conforming. To overcome this lie, you must undertake a difficult spiritual discipline, the transvaluation of all values. This is Nietzsche's radical project. It means critically examining every belief you hold about what makes something good or successful and tracing its origin. Did this value originate from a deep, life-affirming yes within you, or was it imposed from without, a subtle form of social coercion you internalized? When you begin this transvaluation, you will find that the highest achievements have no immediate audience. The hard, foundational work of developing a skill, integrating a painful psychological truth, or taking a terrifying creative risk, all happen in solitude. These acts are valuable not because they might eventually garner praise, but because they are expressions of your own will to power, your internal drive toward growth and complexity. To walk the path of true value is to accept a degree of necessary alienation. It means you must become self-legislating. You must establish your own court, your own judge, and your own standards of success. This is not arrogance. It is the ultimate act of intellectual and spiritual honesty. The moment you define success as self-overcoming, as the act of constantly surpassing your former self, the approval of the world becomes a secondary, and often silent, byproduct, rather than the driving fuel. Stop asking what they want from you. Start asking what the highest, most self-affirmed version of you demands of you. The ego wants to be liked. The authentic self wants to be forged. Lie Thursker 2. Success means achieving a state of perpetual comfort and stability. The second great lie the ego sells you is perhaps its most seductive, that success is the attainment of a final, permanent state of comfort and stability. It paints a picture of a finish line, a retirement fund, a settled career, a relationship free of friction, where all struggle ceases and you can simply rest. Your ego craves this stasis. It detests anxiety, confrontation, and the terrifying uncertainty of the future. It wants safety, because safety means predictability, and predictability allows the small, constrained self to remain unchallenged. This idea of a comfortable, settled life as the ultimate prize is anathema to the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche. For him, life itself is defined by constant change, growth, and the overcoming of resistance. To seek an end state of peace is not a form of achievement. It is a form of spiritual suicide. Nietzsche's entire philosophy is a profound affirmation of the will to power, which is, at its core, a dynamic, restless striving to push against limits to transform, and to elevate the self, a process that is inherently uncomfortable. Nietzsche would say that the craving for stability is a symptom of decadence. It is the sign of a life force that has grown weary and seeks to shrink from the difficult, expansive demands of existence. When you succeed in a way that eliminates all challenge, you haven't secured your happiness. You have merely guaranteed your stagnation. Your ego is tricking you into exchanging potential for security. It presents the highest aspiration not as becoming more, but as remaining safe. Think about the concept of the eternal recurrence, Nietzsche's ultimate thought experiment. He asks, what if you had to live this life exactly as it is now, with all its pains, struggles, and heartbreaks over and over again for all eternity? The ego recoils from this terrifying possibility. It wants to edit out the suffering, to skip the difficult chapters. But the Nietzschean challenge is to live a life with such profound, self-affirming intensity and meaning that you would shout, yes, to the proposition of its eternal return. A life defined by stability cannot withstand this test. A successful life, viewed through Nietzsche's lens, is one that is rich in difficulty and tension. It is in the tension between who you are and who you must become that your greatest strength is forged. The ego sees a painful setback and calls it failure. Nietzsche sees the same event and calls it the necessary hammer used to sculpt a stronger character. Therefore, the truly successful person does not run from chaos. They integrate it. They understand that every moment of deep learning, every breakthrough in creativity, and every significant leap in self-mastery requires stepping deliberately outside the boundaries of comfort. They are engaged in a perpetual war against their own inertia. The goal isn't to build a fortress where nothing can get in. The goal is to become an athlete of the spirit, constantly training in the gymnasium of life's resistance. To overcome this lie, you must deliberately choose the path of self-overcoming. Stop seeing challenges as obstacles to your success and start seeing them as the actual material of your success. If your life is too easy, you must introduce a creative challenge. If your work is too predictable, you must learn a radically new skill. You must consciously introduce tension into your existence, not because you are a masochist, but because you are a creator. The ego wants a soft bed. The true self needs an anvil. Reject the passive aspiration of comfort. Embrace the dynamic, unending struggle of growth. True value is found not in the arrival, but in the audacity of the journey itself, the courage to continually say, I will try again. I will become more. Lie number 3. Your failures are due to circumstances, not yourself overcoming. The third, subtle lie the ego whispers is a comfort blanket woven from denial. Your failures are not truly your own. They are the fault of circumstances, bad luck, or the malice of others. This lie is a powerful defensive mechanism. It protects the fragile self-image by externalizing all responsibility for struggle. When the project fails, it was the market. When the relationship collapses, it was the partner. When your potential remains untapped, it was society, or your upbringing, or the stars. The ego wants to be the victim because the victim is absolved of the terrifying requirement to change. But in this act of externalizing blame, you surrender your most potent power, the power of the creator. Nietzsche recognized that true strength, the essential ingredient of success, is the willingness to look at the totality of your life, including the moments of profound failure and injustice, and claim total ownership. The ego insists on finding a scapegoat. The spirit of the free spirit insists on finding the opportunity for self-transformation. Nietzsche's radical answer to this lie is the concept of Amor Fati, the love of fate. This is not mere resignation or passive acceptance. It is an active, joyful affirmation of everything that has happened and everything that is happening, precisely because those events, the triumphs and the tragedies alike, are the necessary conditions for your becoming. To say Amor Fati is to look at your worst setbacks, the financial loss, the betrayal, the sickness, and declare, this was necessary. This was not only bearable, but valuable. The ego cannot fathom this. It wants to go back and edit the past, to remove the pain. But Nietzsche understood that the person you are right now, the person capable of the success you seek, was forged only in the crucible of the experiences the ego desperately wishes to disown. The obstacles you blame are not impediments to your success. They are the raw materials from which you must sculpt it. When you blame external factors, you cast yourself as a product of the environment, a mere effect of outside causes. You become passive. The moment you embrace Amor Fati, you shift your identity to that of the cause, the ultimate actor and meaning maker. This is the supreme expression of the will to power, the refusal to be defined by what happened to you, and the commitment to define yourself by what you do with what happened to you. The practice of Amor Fati requires immense honesty. It means acknowledging that within every failure there was a choice you made, a blind spot you ignored, or a weakness you had not yet overcome. It means stopping the endless loop of if only and starting the difficult work of from now on. This is how you transform necessity, the facts of your life, into a work of art. True success, under Nietzsche's guidance, is not about avoiding problems. It's about making better problems. It is about taking the circumstances that exist, and rather than letting them crush you, using them to force a higher, more complex version of yourself into existence. It is the creative act of saying, "Yes, I am the result of all that pain, all that loss, and now I use that result to fuel my next great venture." Shed the lie of the innocent victim. Stop looking outward for the source of your struggle. Look inward, not with self-condemnation, but with the ruthless honesty of a sculptor examining a block of marble. Claim the whole of your life. In that terrifying moment of total responsibility, you will discover an unstoppable, self-generated power. Lie number 4. Success must be immediate and clearly visible. Deceiver. Fourth lie the ego uses to sabotage genuine achievement is the fixation on speed and immediate visibility. Success is only real if it happens quickly and can be immediately displayed. We live in an age of compressed timelines and instant feedback loops. The ego loves this environment because it equates worth with the viral, the trending, and the overnight sensation. It demands proof now. It tells you that if you're working hard in solitude, and the world hasn't noticed yet, you must be failing. This lie turns the long, patient excavation of your potential into a desperate, hurried performance. This preoccupation with the instantaneous and the superficial is exactly what Nietzsche criticized as the hurriedness of modern man. He saw in his own time, and it is exponentially truer now, a culture that had lost the capacity for deep, sustained focus and the necessary patience required for genuine creation. Deep value, the kind that endures, requires a different tempo. It demands the slow, meticulous, almost geological process of inner formation. The ego resists this slowness because it feels like a threat to its immediate need for recognition. Nietzsche understood that all great cultural and spiritual achievements are a product of long-term breeding and slow cultivation. He prized the philosopher, the artist, and the creator who could work for years, even decades, without public acknowledgement, driven solely by an internal imperative. This is the difference between the ephemeral trend and the timeless classic. The ego chases the trend. The true self commits to the classic. The core of this lie is a misunderstanding of power. The ego believes power is the ability to command immediate attention, but true will to power, the drive to become more, manifests not as a sudden flash but as an unstoppable, quiet persistence. It is the ability to sustain a high level of effort and focus when no one is watching and when the reward is distant and uncertain. Nietzsche championed the discipline of the ascetic artist or the solitary thinker, whose greatest achievements are invisible to the crowd until they are fully, flawlessly realized. To overcome this lie, you must cultivate a profound sense of perspective and embrace the value of the hidden work. You must stop measuring your progress by how many likes or external congratulations you receive, and instead measure it by the qualitative improvement of your own inner standards. Are you becoming more rigorous, more honest, more skillful? This is the only measurement that truly matters to your higher self. The moment you commit to this long game, the ego panics. It will flood you with doubts. Is this worth it? Why is this taking so long? Maybe I should switch to something easier, something that pays off faster. These thoughts are the death rattle of a self that prefers the shallow acclaim of the present to the profound self-mastery of the future. The successful individual, in the Nietzschean sense, is not concerned with the calendar. They are concerned with the quality of the deed. They are focused on the style with which they approach their work, turning their very life into an aesthetic project. This style requires time, refinement, and the courage to endure the long, uncomfortable silence before the breakthrough. Turn your back on the clock and the crowd. Commit yourself to the hard, slow truth of growth. Understand that the foundations of your inner citadel, your lasting success, must be built in darkness, stone by stone. The ego wants the spotlight. The soul requires the deep, quiet work of the dawn. Lie number 5. Success requires eliminating all pain. Paradox and self-contradiction the fifth, and perhaps most spiritually crippling, lie your ego pushes upon you is the belief that true success is a final, harmonious state where all pain, paradox, and self-contradiction have been eliminated. This lie suggests that the successful life is a clean life, one free from messy emotional conflict, disturbing doubts, moral ambiguities, and the dark, irrational forces that perpetually lurk beneath the surface of consciousness. Your ego, in its desperate, childlike desire for neatness and complete control, seeks to prune away the thorny, unsettling complexity of human experience, advocating instead for a simplistic, sanitized, and ultimately sterile version of the self. This pursuit of a painless, perpetually harmonious inner life is a profound failure to grasp the very engine of growth. Friedrich Nietzsche understood that all-powerful creation is forged in the crucible of tension and opposition. Growth is not the elimination of struggle. It is the successful elevation of struggle. To seek purity and ease is a fundamental retreat from the creative, expansive demands of the will to power. The moment you successfully eliminate pain, you eliminate the primary stimulus for change, for adaptation, and for transcendence. Nietzsche was vehemently opposed to any worldview, whether religious or philosophical, that sought to rationalize, diminish or soothe away the chaotic, instinctual, and often brutal realities of existence. He argued that the establishment of rigid moral binaries, good versus evil, pure versus impure, winner versus loser, is a coping mechanism born of weakness. It is a tool used by the herd to make a terrifyingly complex world manageable. It is a way of judging the world and the self that says, "This part of me is acceptable and must be retained. That part is unacceptable and must be purged." But the individual of true value, the free spirit, is the one who possesses the fortitude to look at life's agonizing contradictions and hold them together without collapsing into despair or seeking refuge in comforting illusions. The ego wants to compartmentalize. It eagerly embraces the good parts of success, the triumph, the reward, the smooth execution, but it desperately attempts to disown the suffering, sacrifice, and psychological darkness that are inextricably linked to achievement. Yet, Nietzsche's profound wisdom demands a Dionysian affirmation of life in its totality. To be Dionysian is to embrace the tragic dimension of existence, the devastating realization that life is a cycle of simultaneous creation and destruction, ecstatic joy and profound sorrow, fleeting order and relentless chaos. The successful individual, therefore, is not the one who avoids tragedy, but the one who can transform that tragedy into an act of creative will, turning pain into art. Real value is not found in uniformity. It is generated in the friction of paradox. Every significant leap in human consciousness or culture has been driven by the confrontation and resolution of deep, seemingly irreconcilable conflicts. The breakthrough doesn't eliminate the contradiction. It achieves a higher-level complexity, a synthesis that makes the individual or the culture stronger and deeper than before. The ego views internal contradiction as a sign of failure or mental illness. The Nietzschean spirit views it as the necessary dialectic of self-overcoming, the essential signpost indicating where the next stage of growth must occur. The truly successful person learns to cultivate productive tensions within their own spirit. They recognize that if their inner life is too placid, they are not growing. They are merely settling. A crucial component of this lie is the ego's desire to discard its own shadow, the concept of the unacknowledged, rejected aspects of the self. The ego, focused on social acceptability and simple self-image, tries to repress all those qualities it deems unsuccessful or unacceptable, the dark desires, the irrational impulses, the capacity for ruthlessness, the deepest jealousies. But Nietzsche knew that the repression of these raw, instinctual forces does not make one successful. It makes one dishonest and spiritually impotent. These repressed forces do not vanish. They simply retreat into the unconscious where they operate from the darkness, silently sabotaging authentic striving and blocking the flow of creative energy. The path to genuine self-mastery requires radical self-acceptance, which is a far more terrifying and difficult task than self-improvement. It demands that you acknowledge the whole spectrum of your nature, and more importantly, that you learn how to actively channel that darkness as potent fuel for your creative fire. This is not about celebrating vice, but about refusing the ultimate delusion, the denial of your own capacity for destruction and chaos. Only by facing and integrating your shadow, by recognizing that your greatest strengths often lie in proximity to your greatest weaknesses, can you unlock the deep reserves of power and authenticity it contains. This integrated self, which Nietzsche called the free spirit, or the individual of sovereign will, can look into the abyss of its own nature and find the necessary tools for creation, refusing to flinch. The ultimate antidote to this lie is the comprehensive affirmation of life encapsulated by Amor Fati, the love of fate. When you genuinely embrace Amor Fati, you are affirming more than just the external circumstances of your life. You are affirming the internal architecture of your being. You are saying yes to the complexity, the uncertainty, and the inherent difficulty of your consciousness. You are affirming the need for the hammer that shatters old idols, the tension that forces growth, and the perpetual, unsettling process of transformation that defines a meaningful existence. Success, then, is not the pursuit of becoming simple or neat or perpetually happy. It is about becoming richly, dangerously complex. It is about achieving a state where your soul is expansive, enough to contain all the inherent paradoxes of human life, your capacity for profound creation and your potential for profound error, and to actively use that internal friction to fuel your highest purpose. Stop trying to edit your nature to fit a clean, easy script. Stop running from your pain and your shadow. Embrace the mess, the struggle, and the glorious, terrifying difficulty of being fully, intensely, and contradictorily alive. That is the only victory the great philosophers and your deepest, most authentic self truly recognize. We have now stood with Nietzsche at the crossroads of success, and we've seen the 5 shadows cast by the ego upon our path. We've dismantled the lie that success is merely external approval, the lie that it is found in perpetual comfort, the deception that blames circumstance instead of claiming ownership, the distraction of immediate visibility, and the ultimate fraud of seeking a life free from pain and paradox. The common thread uniting all these lies is fear, the ego's fear of true, radical individuality. The successful person the ego envisions is a popular, settled, secure, and blameless figure. But the successful individual Nietzsche demands is a creator, one who is often isolated, perpetually striving, fully responsible for their fate, patient in their deep work, and powerful enough to affirm the totality of their messy, contradictory existence. The true work of success, then, is not an external climb. It is an internal demolition and reconstruction. It is the rigorous, lifelong process of self-overcoming. It requires you to become your own philosopher, your own ruthless judge, and your own highest ideal. It means transvaluing the values of the herd and forging your own standards of worth, one difficult, honest choice at a time. Remember this: your most profound value is not a gift you receive, but a burden you must choose to bear and an artwork you must commit to creating. Your task is to live a life so meaningful, so fiercely and authentically your own, that you could look upon its every joy and every agonizing struggle and cry out that ultimate, terrifying affirmation: yes, I will it again. I will it eternally. This is the power of the will to power. This is the construction of your own inner citadel. Thank you for joining us on this difficult journey. If you found the courage to look past the ego's lies, please subscribe to the Inner Citadel for more explorations into philosophy and the architecture of the self. Until next time, take the hammer to your complacency.